let's talk a little bit about that Super Bowl. Me and Big B, I don't know if he was ready for it this past Monday, but it's the Super Bowl. Especially after the passing of Kevin Green this week, I've been looking back on a lot of 2010 Super Bowl films on the Packers, and I just there was something about that team. Even like I went back and watched a little bit of that Eagles wild card game. There was something with that team that had Super Bowl written all over it. There's still 2 weeks left in the season, and a lot can happen in there. But do you think the Packers have those key pieces of leadership, coaches, encouragement, and effort on this team? Not that every Super Bowl team needs to follow the formula of
Right.
2010, but do the Packers have those pieces to win a Super Bowl?
Well, you know what made that group special, Joey, was the fact
Mhm.
that obviously Aaron Rodgers coming into his own as an elite player, a plethora of receiving talent. Jordy Nelson making a huge jump in the second half of that season. You look at defensively the amount of playmakers they had, but it was also the little things though too, right? James
Yeah.
Starks coming out of relatively nowhere to be their lead back during the postseason. You need those type of players that aren't necessarily the ones that are going to be on the cover of the programs, but guys that come out and emerge as offensive weapons, as defensive stalwarts, and even in some extent, special teams mavens. So that's the starting point. And I think you've seen that throughout the course of the season. I think you've
Mhm.
seen guys, whether it be your Alan Lazards or your Robert Tunyons. You look on the defensive side of the ball, as we already touched on with Barnes, but even, Rashawn Gary making a jump this year.
Yeah.
Those types of guys this team is much better today than it was when it started the season back in September. And it doesn't
Mhm.
always work out that way for NFL teams. Teams get worn down, older players get exposed over the course of a long season. I feel like Green Bay really is peaking, and that's what that 2010 team did.
Mhm.
The second aspect of that, though, as you said, was the leadership. 2010 might be one of the biggest collection of leaders
Yeah.
that you've seen, at least during the modern era with the Green Bay Packers.
Mhm.
Charles Woodson becoming a guy that at one point was sort of maligned and didn't necessarily want to be in Green Bay. Well, then suddenly he's the spokesman for this defense. He's
Mhm.
the pulse of that defense. And when he's not in there in the Super Bowl, everybody, Jared
Yeah.
Bush, they all raise their level of play. But also, you look at this year's group, Mercedes Lewis, a
Mhm.
guy that has been around for 15 years, that suffered a lot of losing, Joey, a lot of losing up until that moment that, hey, he made the AFC Championship game with Jacksonville. And then
Mhm.
after that, it looks like, well, maybe this is the door closing on him in his career. But he's
Yeah.
shown not only as a pass blocker, as a run blocker, but just as a voice in that locker room, how valuable he is. The defensive side of the ball, the characters that they have, there may not be like that big veteran presence like that 2010 team did, but there's a lot of guys like Adrian Amos and Jair Alexander. The way that they carry themselves, I
Mhm.
think, says a lot about that group. So, from a pure talent standpoint and from just a pure leadership standpoint, this group definitely checks the boxes to be a Super Bowl contender.
Mhm.
But I've covered these games long enough. I've covered these teams long enough. This isn't the NBA. It's not Major League Baseball. You don't get a best of seven. You have to be
Yep.
best of that day, best of
Mhm.
one. And that's why when you hear Matt LaFleur talk about 1-0 each week or just being able to carry it over into the next performance, that's why it's so important. Because if you don't bring your A game on one set day, that's the 2011 team,
Yep.
it's going to be the end of your season.
Yeah, and we'll talk about kind of what the downfall of that 2011 team in the Week 17 catastrophe that happened there. But I love what you brought up there about the role players. And Rogers talked a little bit about that in his press conference last week. Friend of the show, Aaron Rodgers. And I feel like there's a lot of guys on this team: Alan Lazard, Bobby Tunyon, Jamal Williams, MVS, who like you said, they're not going to be the stars of the show. They're not going to be game planned against or for, but they're going to do their 111th. They're going to do exactly what they're asked to, and they're going to make plays when they're needed. On the defensive side of the ball and leadership, I think, Rodgers was obviously much younger in his first Super Bowl. I think he's, after 3 NFC Championship game losses, he's going to be very hungry to get back. And Mercedes Lewis, another one of those guys. I think this team has those leadership pieces that would feel that encouragement to step up at the right time.